Today on the program, Ukraine Today, Moscow is on fire. Drones are now being intercepted right over the Kremlin. But over the dam of the Belgorod reservoir, they weren't intercepted. The occupiers there were hit by the boomerang of revenge for the Kakhovka Hydroelectric Power Plant. The surrounding areas are going underwater. Russian military infrastructure has taken a serious hit. Trump scolds Putin for his antics with the nuclear burevestnik. Shares of Russian companies reacted to the test of Putin's Wunderwaffe. Not at all as the bunker dweller expected, but with a colossal crash. Fedir Shilenko here with you. Good afternoon. The dam of the Belgorod reservoir was breached after a successful attack by the AFU. Russian units near Vovchansk have been cut off. The AFU confirmed that it was their drones that damaged the dam, and now it is letting water out of the reservoir, as it became known after the unexpected release of water. The occupying units that managed to cross the Siversky Donets near Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region have effectively been cut off from their main forces. The damage to the dam was also confirmed by the regional governor, Vyacheslav Gladkov. Meanwhile, 3 border settlements where the occupiers' reserve forces are stationed, Bezludivka, Novaya Volzhanka and Shebekino, are now under threat of flooding. The Russian frontline units were also affected. According to satellite images, the dugouts and positions of the Russian army in the village of Rafivka have been flooded. Units are now under threat, immediately. 4 brigades in the Vovchansk direction. Due to the rapid flooding, the occupiers have lost their logistics and now have no supply of equipment or ammunition. Putin is in a panic. Military equipment for intercepting drones, right on Red Square. Russians are massively posting photos of soldiers by the Kremlin walls on social media. In these shots, you can see the Moscow Mobile Air Defense Group. Several such groups tried to intercept aerial targets over the capital of the Russian Federation and the Moscow region last night. The Ministry of Defense of the aggressor country even reported shooting down a total of 193 Ukrainian drones, 34 of which were headed directly for Moscow. However, they kept silent about how many got through. But there are reports of powerful explosions in Podolsk, Klimivka, Domodedovo, Kolomna and Troitsk. Airports around Moscow suspended operations, and strategic aviation is being urgently relocated from the Engels 2 military airfield to safer locations. The realities of modern combat, or the results of the evolution of war and drones. Footage filmed near Pokrovsk has been published online. The video shows dozens of Ukrainian military drones filling the entire airspace around. Russian Z channels claim that under such conditions, movement with heavy equipment is impossible, and immediately FPV drones attack. And now, in more detail about what is currently happening at and around the front.
The Ukrainian armed forces are advancing on the enemy with 7 league steps by Kremlin standards. Steps. While Putin's army spends months fighting for every village, our defenders manage, it would seem, the impossible. Just in one day, they recaptured as many as 3 Ukrainian villages from the Russian army. We're talking about the settlement of Sukitske and 2 more villages in the Pokrovsk direction, Kucherev Yar and Uyut.
Thus, as of August 21st, 2025, the situation in this area has been stabilized. Control has been established over 9 settlements. Another 9 have been cleared of enemy sabotage groups. In just the last 10 days, 1,756 enemy soldiers have been eliminated here, and 75 units of enemy equipment.
The occupiers also suffered losses while attempting to break through the Ukrainian front line in a neighboring sector of the front line. Thus, soldiers of the 33rd Brigade repelled a massive mechanized assault in the area of Vladimirovka, Donetsk region. During the battle, the weather conditions were poor, which did not play in the occupiers' favor. At least 3 armored vehicles. The enemy got them stuck in the mud, and the infantry that began to disembark from them came under fire from artillery drones. At one point, even HIMARS joined in to repel the Russian attack. As a result of the battle, the enemy lost 3 armored vehicles destroyed, 3 drowned, and was left without most of its infantry. Nevertheless, the Russian army does not give up hope of breaking through our defenses, at least on some section of the front, at any cost, even if it means hundreds or thousands of their soldiers killed.
Every day, essentially, there is information that our armed forces have locally pushed out the enemy here or have recaptured territory there. In all directions, essentially, they are repelling large-scale enemy attacks. Every day, dozens of attacks take place along the front lines.
The enemy is especially desperate to push Ukrainian forces out of Pokrovsk. Enemy sabotage groups are storming the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces there around the clock, non-stop for the past few days. The situation in this area for the armed forces of Ukraine remains difficult, heavy. No one is less, despite all attempts, than the enemy. Our defenders are courageously holding the defense. Pokrovskaya.
The defense of Pokrovskaya has been holding for more than a year. More than a year, just think about it. How many thousands of Russians have died there? Over 200,000. These are the official confirmed losses according to figures from foreign intelligence. Another question, how much Russian equipment have Russian generals lost in this direction? The generals have lost their ranks.
The Pokrovsk direction is the main topic for Russian propaganda. But when it comes to their so-called achievements on other sections of the front, Kremlin propaganda tries not to spread that information. It's unlikely you'll see this on TV across the border. Footage like this. Within just a few short minutes of detection, the vigilant border guards from the PLA Reconnaissance Strike Group of the Guard Brigade decisively destroy yet another enemy position, demonstrating their efficiency in combat operations. Bull. As a result, the occupiers lost at least 2 of their tanks, a vehicle, an antenna, electronic warfare equipment, and a significant portion of their personnel in the southern Slobozhanщина direction. Despite all their efforts, the Russians have not managed to achieve a single significant victory, neither on the ground nor in the air. The only thing the occupiers are really good at is creating an army of mass civilian terror. A vivid example of this: the barbaric raid on the wind turbines near Kramatorsk. These are clearly civilian critical infrastructure facilities. In this way, the Russians destroyed the 3rd wind power station in Kramatorsk. Before this, the occupiers had attacked wind turbines. On October 22nd and 24th, the endless air raids on Ukrainian cities may become the Kremlin's new tactic. For this purpose, Russia is actively testing more and more new types of its own drones. For example, UAVs with a ring wing. An unusual enemy drone was detected by a Ukrainian anti-aircraft drone. Its exact purpose has not yet been determined, but it is believed that it could have carried out both reconnaissance and strike missions. In total, just last week alone, the enemy sent towards Ukraine at least 1,200 UAVs, dropped more than 1,360 glide bombs, and used over 50 missiles. Every Russian strike is an attempt to inflict as much harm as possible on ordinary life. This week, these are strikes on residential buildings, on our people, on children, and on public infrastructure. This is the main target for the Russians. Thousands of strikes with various types of weapons, all in just 1 week. However, the Ukrainian response to Russian terror is also not far off, military analysts assure.
Ukraine was, is, and will be, and sooner or later, Ukrainian Tomahawks will inevitably meet Russian decision-making centers.
And while the American Tomahawks are still on their way, the security service of Ukraine has shown off its own new acquisitions.
We are handing over this wonderful Mogura B7, which has already scored several victories.
The drone has been acquired. It was purchased with donations from Ukrainians as part of a large-scale fundraising campaign, which was joined by local artists, influencers, and athletes.
This strike by a naval drone is the first in the world to have destroyed aerial targets.
Thanks to just one such naval drone, the occupiers can suffer colossal losses, which the Security Service of Ukraine promises to showcase in their upcoming video reports.
Donald Trump brought Vladimir Putin down from the heavens to the underground bunker. The US president reminded the Russian dictator that Russia is not the only country with nuclear weapons. And in the case of the current head of the White House, blackmail could end very badly.
They know that we have a nuclear submarine, the best in the world, right off their shores. So we don't even need to fly 8,000 miles. And they don't play games with us. We don't play games with them either. We also constantly test missiles. But, you know, we have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to fly 8,000 miles. And by the way, I don't think it's appropriate for Putin to speak at all. Things like that. He should have ended the war. A war that was supposed to last 1 week and now the 4th year is about to begin. That's what he should be doing, not testing missiles.
Let me remind you that on October 26th, the chief of the Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, reported to Putin about the successful test of a new nuclear-capable cruise missile, Petrel. According to him, the missile flew 14,000 kilometers.
The specifications of the Petrel allow it to be used with guaranteed accuracy against highly protected targets at long distances. In addition, all assigned vertical and horizontal maneuvers were performed during the flight. And it demonstrated high capabilities in bypassing air defense and missile defense systems. In
the end, instead of nuclear blackmail, Putin shot himself in the foot. Somehow it turned out that the Petrel missile struck a blow to the Russian economy. The Russian stock market responded with a sharp decline.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Meanwhile, in the United States, Putin's chief negotiator Kirill Dmitriev is trying to smooth over the senseless behavior of his Kremlin boss. Is he succeeding? Not even gifts of chocolate candies with Putin's quotes for American officials are helping. It's no wonder, since the rappers feature insane phrases. Things like, "you have to strike first," "borders never end," and other trademark Putin nonsense. Next, we'll talk about whether the Kremlin is managing to sway the White House to its side on the issue of the war in Ukraine. The US imposes sanctions which, according to the Kremlin, don't scare them. And a special envoy, Putin's special envoy, immediately sets off on an American tour to appease the overseas hosts. I
believe that Russia, the US, and Ukraine are actually quite close to a diplomatic solution. President Zelensky has taken a big step by acknowledging that the issue concerns the front lines.
No matter how much the Russian leadership tries to publicly downplay it, claiming that sanctions are only beneficial for Russia, Donald Trump has a different opinion. He believes that the new sanctions will inflict irreparable damage on Russia within the next 6 months.
Today, Putin stated that Russia is not vulnerable to US sanctions and that they will not affect the economy of the Russian Federation.
I'm glad he thinks so. That's good. Let's see what happens in 6 months.
Furthermore, according to Donald Trump, because of the sanctions, China is already reducing its purchases of Russian black gold, and India is even completely refusing it.
Because of this clause about secondary sanctions, moreover, without a clear list of legal entities, but there was an immediate reaction, for example, in China, where they temporarily suspended purchases of Russian energy resources. Well, of course, as is often the case in such complex situations, most likely they will eventually resume sooner or later, and safe, reliable, and effective ways to do it will certainly be found. However, at first, many people are understandably wary and cautious of such a decisive and bold stance from Trump, who really aims, if not to completely end the Russian-Ukrainian war, then at least to halt, or at the very least to significantly slow down the active fighting and ongoing hostilities. American
sanctions against Russian oil giants Lukoil and Rosneft have stirred things up. The Kremlin's nest of vipers.
The sanctions blow against the Russian Federation is very tangible. The potential is very significant. This is perfectly understood in the Kremlin. They themselves understand it very well. Putin, it was quite evident from his noticeably nervous reaction related to the toilets. He tried to make some awkward jokes, but even from his clumsy and uneasy look, it was clear that this was a real blow to him.
Following Trump's decision to impose sanctions and also cancel the meeting with Putin in Budapest, the Russian dictator tried to win Trump over again. And in parallel with the ongoing strikes on civilian targets in Ukraine, kindergartens, residential buildings, and critical infrastructure, thank you, the bunker dweller hypocritically declared that dialogue is better. The war continues. According to the Wall Street Journal, the sanctions imposed are not the strongest possible blow the White House could have dealt to the Kremlin. The US president chose a medium level of severity for the sanctions against Russia.
Why did Trump reach a boiling point in his relationship with Putin? The US president was offered 3 options for sanctions after his patience with the Kremlin over the war in Ukraine ran out. Was exhausted, according to
the sources. The harshest option for sanctions was aimed at Russian industry and the top leadership of the aggressor country. And if the Kremlin does not accept Washington's terms in the near future, the US president may continue and intensify the pressure already begun.
By him. Pressure? Here, it is necessary to focus on the date of Christmas in order, for example, to give a serious impetus to the negotiation process to try to stop active hostilities in the Russian-Ukrainian war by Christmas. This window of opportunity exists right now. Both Ukraine and the United States, as well as European partners, are actively working on it. Everyone in the anti-Putin coalition is trying to strengthen Trump and